What is going on, everybody? So, I'm excited to be back today to talk about a new release indie horror film. So, last year, I got a chance to check out the film Skinamarink, and it made huge buzz in the media as, some people calling it one of the scariest films of all time, some people saying it was the most boring thing that ever existed and that nothing happens. And whenever an independent filmmaker makes a passion project and it gets talked about to that level, I get very excited, especially someone like Kyle Ball, who made that film and made such an immense amount of money on this project that he cared for and really made something unique and special. I obviously loved Skinamarink if you watched my review. And so knowing that there was another experimental-esque horror film in the indie scope that was made on a micro budget got me very excited because I love adding films like that into some of the echelon of my favorite types of horror movies. And so I could not wait to watch this one. And the movie I'm going to be discussing today is The Outwaters. The Outwaters is directed by Robbie Banfitch. Four travelers encounter menacing phenomena while camping in a remote stretch of the Mojave Desert. So I didn't even watch a trailer for this movie. I saw some of the marketing on Twitter for it, and I thought it was really cool the way that they were approaching marketing this film. And, it was a similar situation to Skinamarink where you had people saying, this is one of the most horrifying experiences I've ever had. You had some people saying this is the most boring, awful thing that's ever existed. So when something's that polarizing, I always am very excited to see it. And unfortunately, I really disliked this a lot. I was hopeful to really appreciate it. And before I get into talking about the review, I think it's always important to address that whenever an independent filmmaker makes something like this on a micro budget, I am always rooting for them to succeed, even if I don't like the movie. Because at the end of the day, I graduated film school. I know making movies is hard. It's hard to get people together to shoot something, to create something, to fulfill this passion that you have to make a piece of art is very difficult. And so I commend the filmmakers of this movie for stepping out of a normal boundary and trying to create something unique and different. It just didn't work for me. So the premise of this story is you have this group of friends who come together, and at the beginning of the film, we're introduced to them, and one of them is a music artist, and she wants to make a music video. So they travel out into the desert to make this music video together, and while they're camping out in the desert, weird things start to happen to them, and one of the guys in particular we follow for most of the second act of the film. And that's essentially it. There's really not a whole lot of exposition in the film. There's not a whole ton of dialogue. There's things sort of interlaid in the movie, but it's mostly just here's your setup and here is, the creepy set of imagery and onslaught of things that we're going to show you in the third act of the film. And I think the simplicity of this film is unfortunately what causes it to be not all that interesting. Whereas you talk about a film like Skinamarink, which I'm assuming it's annoying for both of these filmmakers to have the comparison, but just for relevance sake. Skinamarink has this very simplistic premise of these two kids being trapped in this house and everything is through their lens, but the simplicity is used to its advantage. You're really stuck in this space and you sort of feel it through these children's point of view by not really seeing their faces, always being at a weird angle in the room, really keeps you kind of unsettled and engaged with what's going on with them. This film, the first 50 minutes is a bloated introduction to these characters that tries to sort of build some level of chemistry between them, but I still didn't really care. There's not really enough emotional beats to attach yourself onto the people. The music they're making really isn't all that good, which, adds to the fact that you just don't care all that much. And so for 50 minutes of the movie, you're just driving around with these people. And there are some really nice shots. The cinematography in this looks really good at moments. There's also some really chaotic, shaky cam work, which even to today's standards with people's access to technology, you feel like people would really be hard-pressed to suck that bad with a camera with the amount that it shakes and is kind of all over the place in this film. And yeah, that first 50 minutes just kept pulling me out of it. I was just like, come on, let's get to the point. Even little things like a hatchet being stuck in the top of a rock somewhere and seeing some stranger off in the distance. It doesn't have that tension of the Blair Witch Project, because whenever I think of great found footage, I think of the Blair Witch Project, where you're putting these people in a circumstance with no technology. They have a map. They're going and exploring this, place that has all this lore surrounding it that adds to the horror and the terror for you as the viewer. And as experimental as that movie was for the time period that it came out, it succeeded on every front. This film has nothing to make you scared of other than weird noises start happening, and the weird noises end up being correlated to this weird, almost like hallucinatory trip that the lead character goes on, which you're seeing him stagger through the outside of the desert, which so many of the shots in this are lit so darkly, it's hard to even understand what's going on, and the reliance on the really loud, I joked, like Vine Boom-esque sound effect that keeps replaying itself over and over and over again through the film. You're not scared of it or unsettled by it anymore because it just keeps going over and over and over again. And when the reliance on that becomes how to keep you unsettled, that's what pulls me out of it. And there are some moments, with characters like screaming in the distance that are really horrifying, but when you're not engaged, which I was so pulled out of it by then, it was hard to re-immerse myself when things got frightening. I just didn't care. And there are some haunting imagery in this. I do like the little weird worm creatures that show up throughout the movie. I thought that was really cool. But you have to keep my interest engaged. You have to make me want to be invested in these characters, even if you take an experimental route, which I love experimental film. I love when you can kind of subvert the non-traditional narrative and do something really unique. But this movie does it in a way that feels more straightforward for the first 50 minutes and then just sort of turns on its head in the last hour or so and says, well, now we're an experimental film. And I think if it would have just kept the one direction the entire time, it would have been much more immersive and engaging, where instead it just left me not really caring. I watched this a few days ago. I've already forgot most of the film after I watched it. There's not a whole lot of scenes or imagery that really sticks heavily in my head like Skinamarink, where there's so many shots of that movie that are just embedded in my brain for an eternity, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since I saw it months and months and months ago. And so that's unfortunate. And I will watch something else Robbie Banfitch makes, because it's clear that he has a passion and that he wants to make these really unique pieces of art, and I root for him in the future, and I really hope that whatever project that he attempts to make next, that I like a lot more than I liked the Outwaters. So have you seen the Outwaters? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I did not enjoy this movie, but I think you should watch it and make an opinion on your own. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.